on the agenda is to talk about the yarn and how to add the yarn to your project when you run out of yarn. Whether you're on the bottom of your project or on the back, it's important that we know how we want our color sequence to go. Now, for my example here and the sample, I did pull the yarn from the center of both the cupcake and the nautical yarn. So down here, this was the start of my project from pulling from the center. As I go through my entire project and I work through both of these balls of yarn, I obviously am going to end up out here with this lighter shade of white and out here with like more of the white and the blue together. As this runs out, if I'm still on the bottom, let's say, I then have to decide, do I want to reverse my color order where I begin now where I ended, or do I want to go back to the center and pull out? I'll be completely honest. It doesn't matter to me if you start your color sequence at the same point that you did your cast on, or if you do it in reverse. Whatever makes you happy with your project. I know with the larger sizes that you will be going through more color sequences than the smaller sizes. That's just the name of the game because we have more stitches and our project is wider, so our color changes are thinner. You just need to be happy with whatever you choose. One thing that is very important though is when we choose to add our yarn for the back of our project and the fronts of our project, it is right now that we have to make sure all of our yarn sets are ready to go at the same point in the color changes. Let me show you two different ways that you can accomplish this. The first way is to grab a generic kitchen scale just like this and weigh your yarn that you have remaining that you plan on using for the back of your project. So this is the part we would be working on for the homework right now. So I want to make sure I weigh each one individually. So I can weigh this one first and it's 6.5 grams. So then I would take my pattern and I would just make a note. Not 6.5, it's 65 grams. I'm sorry, 65 grams. And then I would weigh my second color, which is my nautical, and it's 67 grams. So then I would make a note, 67 grams, okay? I now know how much yarn is remaining in each ball of yarn in my set that I am using for my back. What I can do now is when it's time for me to do the fronts, I can take one set and I can put my yarn on the scale and then I can either begin to wind off from the center until I get to the 67 grams on here, and I will be out here to about this point in the project. So that way I know I am starting roughly at the same point in my yarn ball as I did in this one. Does that make sense? And I can wind it off just in a basic ball through my hand, or I can wind it off on a ball winder, okay? Once I do it with that one, I would do the same thing with this one, and Bob's your uncle, okay? If you don't have a scale, that comes a little bit trickier, but it is absolutely possible. Instead of weighing your yarn, what you would do is you would grab all of the yarn you have remaining and you would designate it for where you're going to use it on your project. So for example, I would say this would be for my right front, this would be for my back, and then I'd have two more balls of yarn over here for my left front. Then what I can do is sort of eyeball where it is in this project that the yarn is remaining in this ball of yarn. So I can take a look here and I can see I'm sort of to the blackish, darkish blue color and the blue, and I can come over here and I can say, okay, I know I've worked through all of the teal, so I know I'm not going to have any of the teal remaining. So I know it's about there that I'm going to have to remove and start at about that point. So I can either pop this out completely or I can wind it off to about that point. And then I want to do the same thing to the yarn that would go to my left front so that they're all roughly at the same point, okay? Don't get rid of the yarn you've just pulled out though, whether you've pulled out from the center or pulled out from the outside, because you will be able to use that later on if you should run out of what you have left here and you need to go back to this part. You'll have to make that decision as it comes. Does that make sense? You'd also want to do the same with your cupcake. You would try and get to the point where you roughly are in the same color placement so that way you can carry on for the front. What this does is it allows your two fronts especially to be at the same point in the color change, so as you're working your fronts, they can be as identical as possible. If the back is a little bit off, nobody's really gonna tell, but if your fronts are a little bit off, it's definitely gonna be a little bit more noticeable. So if there's a place to fudge it a little bit, that would be in the back color changes. The last thing I do want to mention is that if all of this is too much for you and you just want the colors to fall where they may, you absolutely can. Nobody is telling you you can't do that. There are no knitting police. You go ahead and you do what works best for you.